Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3 is out. And to no one's surprise, it was a terrible animation. Will the DC animated multiverse cease to exist? Were the homages to classic animated series any good? Stay until the end of the video, as that's what we'll discuss today in this spoiler-filled review. Welcome to Comic Chronicles. Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3 has arrived, and with it, we witness the end of the controversial Tomorrowverse, which began with Superman, Man of Tomorrow. While Part 1 of the Crisis had something somewhat interesting, despite not being that good, Part 2 was dreadful. Therefore, Part 3 couldn't possibly be worse. Indeed, Part 3 had very few interesting moments, but before we get into the details of this animated film, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. Let's grow this community of DC fans that's only getting bigger. Help us out so YouTube shares this video with more people. Thank you very much, and let's get into the topic of the video. The first thing I want to highlight as a negative point is the lack of quality in animation execution. The movements are very stiff, and in some cases, we have poorly drawn characters, such as this giant Joker. The film's action scenes are just some heroes fighting dinosaurs, German soldiers from the Second World War, and shooting power beams at the Anti-Monitor. All of this without any emotion and a tiresome-to-watch animation because it's so long. Unlike Part 2, which spent more than half the time on flashbacks of Supergirl and Psycho Pirate, Part 3 kept its focus entirely on the crisis problem. The surviving Earths were in bleed, an interdimensional plane that forms barriers for parallel dimensions. It is spatially connected to the multiversal nexus and the nanoverse, serving as the space between the multiversal worlds bordering the sphere of the gods within the Speed Force wall. Although these Earths were temporarily safe there, they couldn't continue in the state they were in. There were also portals through which creatures and people from other Earths were crossing, increasing the chaos. In the midst of this, we discover that Wonder Woman, who we thought had lost her life after her Earth was destroyed, was still alive but frozen since she is immortal. This doesn't make sense to me because being mortal or immortal shouldn't matter to any matter, especially since, when Earth 12 appears, the Earth of Batman, the animated series and Justice League, Wonder Woman lost her life along with everyone else there. It would have made more sense if another Wonder Woman had joined the heroes instead of this convenient plot twist. Another thing we see is a kind of Legion of Doom that Lex Luthor assembled with Batman villains, curiously without any villains from other heroes. They believe falling apart, leading Luthor to teleport to the satellite where the heroes are gathered. The Anti-Monitor then appears in bleed, opening an interdimensional rift and starting to destroy more Earths. Soon, the heroes split into two groups, one to fight the Anti-Monitor, which was one of the most boring things in the movie, and the other to investigate why the crisis was happening, to maybe find a way to stop it. What this second group is involved in was more interesting. Here we see more connections between the Tomorrowverse and the new 52-based universe, initially very cool to see, except for the explanation that Flash didn't create a flashpoint, he was actually under a spell cast by John Constantine, sending him back in time to kill Darkseid as a baby, resulting in an anomaly in the universe. Hence, the Tomorrowverse emerged as a result of Flash's actions. At this point, what was starting to get interesting in the animation turned bad again because their explanation for the Anti-Monitor's existence was the absence of Darkseid and that the multiverse's existence is like a cancer that the Anti-Monitor must combat. Basically, they turned the Anti-Monitor into a kind of white blood cell. Indeed, this script was very bad. Whenever they managed to get some details right, it quickly turned bad again, never moving towards something good. Another major event in this movie is Supergirl's sacrifice to defeat the Anti-Monitor, and once again, they managed to ruin a significant moment in Crisis history and undoubtedly one of the most impactful deaths in the comics. All dialogues and scenes were done in such a way that you feel no impact watching it all. Superman and Supergirl convey no emotion in the sacrifice, making a very iconic comic moment rather forgettable in this animation. The situation is so critical that only a deus ex machina could conveniently resolve it all. As if all this wasn't enough, things get even worse. Supergirl destroyed the Anti-Monitor, but several more then appear, making her sacrifice in vain. They discover that to stop all this, there should be only one Earth. Batgirl tells the other heroes that she remembered a conversation she had with Supergirl, revealing that in the future, in the Legion of Superheroes Earth, a miracle machine was created. This Earth was destroyed, but the miracle machine was lost in a limbo. Out of nowhere, they decide to use Nightshade in the animation to fetch the machine and, as if by magic, the miracle machine is there with the heroes, who try to energize it somehow. Meanwhile, more Earths are destroyed, and here we see tributes in this animation to DC's classic animated series, done as poorly as in the Flash movie. I don't understand why they always need to pay homage to the various other DC works over the years by destroying their Earths. It ends up being even disrespectful to fans. The Super Friends Earth appeared briefly and no longer exists. Earth 2003, which is the Teen Titans Earth, was destroyed without even showing the Titans, only showing their tower being hit by antimatter. Earth 12 had a slightly better homage with Kevin Conroy appearing as Batman, but even so, it was done very poorly. Kevin Conroy's line as Batman was indeed very good. He said, "I care, Joker. About Gotham, about justice. And if it has to end, at least I go out like this, being Batman." We can easily see it as his farewell in the role, even though we might still see future works he completed before his passing. It made a lot of sense to have Kevin Conroy say goodbye through this Batman, since Batman, the animated series, is where he started his entire career as the definitive voice of Batman. The problem is the Justice League's involvement. Superman appears from the back, Aquaman is typing on the computer with his hook, and Wonder Woman also no longer exists here. None of this makes sense with this animated universe. As we saw Batman Beyond, we saw Terry grow up in the epilogue episode of Justice League. The worst thing is that the explanation for the Anti-Monitor's existence was the non-existence of Darkseid in each universe, since he was supposed to be an absolute point in the universe. The problem is that these specific universes had Darkseid, so erasing them from existence doesn't make sense. After all attempts fail, Wonder Woman sacrifices herself to activate the miracle machine, since she is immortal and something as valuable as what they wanted in return was needed. And thus, a new Earth is created. As in the comics, the remaining Earths merge into one, and no one remembers the Crisis's existence once they move to this new Earth. It turned out to be a somewhat hopeful ending, but in a way, the heroes also lose in this animation, making this ending not too different from Justice League Dark, Apocalypse War. If you haven't read the Crisis on Infinite Earths comic yet, I'll leave the affiliate link to the comic and other DC comics in this video's description so you can get them at a good price with no extra costs. So this was the conclusion of the Tomorrowverse. Part 1 of the Crisis was decent, Part 2 was horrible, and Part 3 was bad. Unfortunately, the conclusion brought us terrible homages, empty characters, a dragged-out story, and a horribly designed Anti-Monitor. It's a shame to see how the Tomorrowverse quality decreased with each animation. There were several comic adaptations, but without any emotion. Superman, Man of Tomorrow had good quality animation, and Justice Society was also a great animation with a compelling story and fluid movements. These two animations even had better action scenes than the new 52-based animations. Batman, The Long Halloween was still somewhat interesting, but Green Lantern, Beware My Power is where things started to go downhill. With each new animated film, things only got worse until we reached Crisis on Infinite Earths. Hence, we can conclude that this universe had mostly mediocre and bad animations. After this, I believe we won't see animated film universes in DC for a long time, except for Elseworld stories or those focused on hypertime, which are different realities, such as Batman, Caped Crusader or My Adventures with Superman. Anything else will most likely be produced within James Gunn's DCU. Perhaps this is the best path for DC to follow in animations, given that the last animated film universe was heavily criticized by the audience. Guys, thank you so much for being present in this video. Write in the comments your opinion about this animation, tap the sphere that's on your screen, subscribe to our channel, and activate notifications. This is the best place for DC fans. See you in the next video.